My name is Rich Bonura. I live currently in Phoenix, Arizona, but when I started my Rush touring days, I lived back in New York, where it was much easier to hit multiple shows in multiple areas of a city area. I was 14. I can't honestly say that I remember much about it, although I know that I was hooked, and I started doing 6 shows on every tour from that moment. Okay, so the 80 shows for me, well, being in high school and then the early part of college, I can say there were a little bit of hazy times in there, but a lot of fun. One of the things I can vividly remember is Roll the Bones. The big rabbits on the stage was always a really cool part of the setup for me, and I was glad that they were acknowledged in this tour's video with the bunnies, but the bunnies were pretty big for me in the 80s, so definitely an image burned of that tour based on that. I was dating a girl who was going to school in Rhode Island, and I used to leave work early on a Friday morning after I finished my shift and drive up there and spend the weekends, and there was nothing but Counterparts for me. Oh, no, it wasn't Counterparts. It was, Blue Cover, Counterparts. So Counterparts just, 3-hour drive there the whole way, and the 3-hour drive back the whole way back on Monday morning to go to work. There's just something about that album that just, the music kept me awake on a drive, but it just really spoke to me. The lyrics in it are great, with Alien Shore, which is a great Rush song, and it really was a good period. I remember those times fondly based on that being the soundtrack to those drives. So it really made it worthwhile to do the drive and also be able to listen to some really good music as the soundtrack. I was probably approaching around the 30-ish mark. I've been fortunate enough that I saved all my tickets, so I actually have all my ticket stubs going to way back when, and it's a collage of different dates and locations. What's truly unique about it is the opening acts that I did see but don't even remember seeing, because of the fact that it was all about Rush for me at the time. But you go back to the Mr. Big days, you go back to Marillion opening up, Candlebox, the 90s Candlebox opening up, which is a funny story about that is I saw Candlebox 2 nights before that play at a community college in a room that had no more than 150 people in it, and then 2 nights later they were opening for Rush in Madison Square Garden. I've picked up quite a bit over the last several years. Right after Counterparts, that's where I really kind of embraced making sure I went to opening night. So from that tour on, I always went to opening night, and then I started hitting the last night of the show. So I started with the last night, the first night, the last night, and then I had to fill shows in the in-between. And what I would do for that is, depending on what my work schedule was traveling me for, so I get the free hotel, free airfare, and the free food, I would make sure that I would arrange my travel schedule to my Rush schedule. Funny moment at that point was my boss at one point called me up and says, "Hey, you haven't sent me your pipeline and where you're going to be traveling, but are you going to be in Texas and St. Louis and Florida?" And I'm like, "Yeah, how do you know that?" He goes, "I'm looking at the Rush website. I know exactly where you're going to be." So during that period, I did spend a lot of time actually venturing out to larger and better venues. So I generally get asked a lot what's kind of the memorable ones for me. I will tell you that I saw Rush play at Mohegan Sun, which I kind of was just going to see them play in a casino that wasn't MGM, and it seats about 10 or 12,000, and it was probably the best sounding Rush show I had ever heard. I mean, the sound in that place was bar none incredible. I got goosebumps. And visually, the best show I ever saw was at Red Rock, where we actually sat front row, and front row at Red Rock is the same height as the stage. So the only thing between me and Geddy and Alex was literally a bar. And my friend who was handicapped was in a wheelchair, and during one of the songs, Alex actually put a pick in his mouth, walked over to the bar, leaned over it, and let my friend roll up and actually pull it from his mouth, which was just totally cool. But it was an experience of a backyard concert. I mean, I literally felt that it was just us and them there. They were vibing off of us. Everything was great. You could hear the roar of the people behind you, but you didn't see them. You didn't see any of the lights, really. It just was really an intimate moment. And for the first time in all my years of doing this, I actually considered selling my 2 shows that I had after that, because I didn't want to ruin the moment. Of course I didn't. I actually went to the shows, but that moment is seared in my mind as Rush memory #1. So those were good years.
July 27th in 2015 here in Phoenix, Arizona, Rush will be here for the R40 tour. And talk to me about the next two shows, the Irvine show and the LA Forum show, which will be the last one of the tour.
Yep. So this year when touring was coming around, my wife and I discussed it, and she said, how many shows you're at? And at that point I had added up, I was at 85, and I always said that I wanted to hit 100 shows before either I died or they retired. And so she said, well, it's totally doable. You have to do it. So I've actually done 15 stops on this tour out of the 34. I was actually just yesterday in Las Vegas, seeing Rush in Las Vegas. Here I am in Phoenix to see Jacob Moon, and then tomorrow I'll get to see Rush a little closer to home in Phoenix. And then I'm not actually going to Irvine to hit my 100th show. I'm waiting for the last night at the Forum, which my 17-year-old son is coming with me for moral support. At 17, he's seen 9 Rush shows, so it's kind of got a good start on things. But it's going to be a really emotional evening because after 30 years of doing this and pursuing a goal you never thought was really attainable, to actually have it come to fruition, it's pretty awesome, and I feel very, very appreciative of this whole experience, considering I sit next to people, it's their first time on this tour seeing Rush, and yet I've been doing this for 30 years and have 100 shows at this coming point. By the time this all ends, I'll have 100 shows behind me, and they're just getting to see it for the first time. So it's been a life well spent. Great people, great music, great stadiums and arenas and places that I've gotten to view music around the country. Different nights where different things happen, the memorable things like seeing Neil bumble a stick, or in Toronto on this tour when they went to record the first Headlong Flight, and Geddy's bass doesn't work, and for the first time I ever saw him hold up a bass on stage like, hey, I don't have this working. And you come to appreciate that the fact that as accomplished they are as musicians and playing at the height of their game, that they're still human, that they still make little errors and little mistakes. And the beauty for people like me who do this kind of regularly is those are the moments that I come to appreciate about live music, because if you weren't there, you didn't get to see it. So it's been a really, again, I've been saying for the last 12 nights now, I wouldn't trade tomorrow for today, which from Headlong Flight, and it's held true. And the only night I think that won't hold true is the last night at the Forum, because that night, I don't know, something magical I'm hoping is going to happen, and there'll be a release of achieving a goal. But if they come back in playing, my next goal will have to be 212. So let's let's hope they got some pretty good aspirations if they ever decide to come back and tour again.